there. Welcome to the Work Cultured podcast. Today we've got Adam McGraw. He's a co-founder and CEO of Crew. He is a coach, consultant, speaker. Adam, thanks so much for being on today.
Yeah, Jason, good to be here, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, but before we dive too far in, give us a little bit of snapshot of who you are and what Crew is all about as well.
Right out of the gate, loaded question, but yeah, as far as who am I? I'm somebody that at this point has finally figured out how to connect a lot of things that I'm really passionate about at my core that I think kind of swirled around underlyingly for most of my life, and I'm figuring out, like, through a 20-year career journey so far, how to actually operationalize that and make it come to life, right? I think that would be like my most summarized version of who I am. I started out entrepreneurially, did some voiceover stuff out of college because I never wanted to work in corporate America and follow what my dad did. Next thing you know, in 2007, I joined corporate America, started at Amex in frontline B2B sales, and really quickly moved my way into leadership because that's what I'm most passionate about, is kind of working with others, inspiring others, unleashing others when I can. And 6 years in Amex, thought I was never going to leave because they do a really good job of kind of reeling in even very entrepreneurial spirited folks into the company broader mission. So got to give them credit for that. And then, went through some twists and turns that, quite frankly, started with me picking up a book in the airport in 2012 called Positive Intelligence, which was a year-and-a-half-long New York Times bestseller, #1 New York Times bestseller, and thought it was just going to be a good read. And it was more than a good read. It was profoundly impactful to me. It was a little bit of a punch in the gut because it really spoke to me about the things I'd struggled with my entire life since I was a kid. Underlying stuff I was good at hiding, but I was so kind of provoked by it, quite frankly. And I saw everyone around me that was very, very simply being described too. It's kind of the neuroscience and the positive psychology around how almost all of us are getting in our own way, despite whatever levels of success we may be having. We may be best in teams, best in our family, but most of us have a different level of untapped potential, especially when we view success in a more holistic lens, right? You got the productivity lane, you got the relationship lane, but you also have the stress and happiness and fulfillment lane. And I was just like, wow, this is so interesting and so different than anything I had access to, even in a blue chip brand. And I reached out, became friends with the author, Shirzad Chamine, and that friendship, right, that connection, that outreach, he took the call. We had a 2-hour Zoom, totally connected, spent 7 years being friends organically, basically, and kind of getting coached by a guy that was a, pretty expensive one-to-one coach that I would have never been able to afford, and kind of morphed into me going to work for him and, helping him kind of think through the commercial side of launching this very unique, executive coaching kind of model and personal growth kind of model. And eventually even coached me into kind of doing my own thing when I was kind of really trying to figure out, the decision that I made of working with him and trying to figure out the best use of my time and my talent. And that journey of kind of going off and being a coach and a consultant for about 4 years over the COVID timeframe, which was an interesting time to cut your teeth at that.
Right.
Led into the idea of kind of this concept of Crew, which is, I was working in some peer support communities, running workshops, and I realized there's a real need here for people in leadership, particularly, to have a untethered support ecosystem of people that get it. And that's really what Crew is aiming to be for a lot of folks. So I know that was long-winded, but
no, that's awesome. In fact, I can't even remember if it happened on the actual interview or if it was a sidebar afterwards, but my last guest and I got into the world of executive coaching, and for him it was just a profound impact, and it's been the same for me. I mean, even just getting certified as a coach myself, being coached in that time was worth every penny. And yeah, so I love that you've built a whole model around it, and you're diving deep, and all because of a book that you grabbed in the airport. What a great story.
And the relationship, right? I just can't stress enough the importance of, in a day of AI and you think everything's digitally at your fingertips. For me, every single massive jump that I've made was completely because of connections and relationships, which is what, quite frankly, Crew's all about,
That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm actually AI, by the way. This isn't a real interview.
Yeah.
So
Well, you're good at it. You're good. This is good. AI is getting friggin' good, man. So
well, thank you so much for that background. We're going to dive right in. Okay. Like you thought that question was loaded. We ask every guest the same first question other than who are you? And it's this: what is a mistake that you've made in leadership that you'll never forget?
Defining my success based on titles, you know, that was the early definition for me of like whether I measuring myself and, you know, looking for the respect that you seek when you're doing a job or a role or a profession, and thinking that the title is the thing that's the right measurement indicator, and being guided by that and led by that.
So that was
I did
about
that for 12 years. Yeah.
Was that about just like the accolades and how it felt, or like say more on what
it
was
was
going on there?
basically just me thinking that, you know, all of your, you know, contributions and all of your efforts, you know, eventually should be leading to the right titles, right? The right promotions, the right bigger scope roles. And, you know, and that's true to a certain extent, because you do get recognized and rewarded in, you know, in efforts and company settings with these kinds of titles. But it was totally something that started to, in my mind, I realized, right, it's equally as detrimental as it is healthy from a motivational standpoint. There was a poison element of being led by that, because then when you don't have certain titles, when you don't get the jobs that you want as quickly as you want, it was a derailer for me. I'm a hyperachiever, right? And so I was very driven towards these titles. I was hitting some of these titles and in line for titles, but it was never going to be fast enough. And it was always going to be this 2 steps forward, but also kind of 2 steps back dance, because to me, that was what I was viewing kind of the leadership role around. Of course, it was about contributing to others, but my measurement indicator was too tied to that and too correlated to that in earlier phases of my leadership career.
And then what did it shift to? What did you learn through that?
Well, I've learned through a lot of introspective work, you know, and starting to go down paths that were much more, I think, deeply rooted around my core passions and my core purpose stuff that I'm tied to, that's the stuff, right? I basically just started experiencing stuff that was much more fulfilling and much more sustainable than the temporary fleeting moments of winning an award and an accolade, or getting the new notch that you sling onto LinkedIn and you get a bunch of people tagging to you because they want to just be associated with the moment or what you might do for them, right? Like I realized like that's not leadership. It's the opposite actually. And I think it actually starts to really poison and derail a lot of well-intended leadership competencies, because so many people get sucked into that rat race. And you know,
totally.
Next thing you know, 20 or 30 years goes by and you're questioning whether you've made some of the right decisions.
Yeah, totally. So for you, it shifted from the extrinsic motivator to the intrinsic motivator, right? The whatever something could be given to you to, this is what's inside of me, and it's innate and it's going to drive me no matter what's happening on the outside.
Yeah, Jason. I mean, the core, you know, like the first question I tried to answer, the only reason I got into leadership is because my entire life, I loved watching and helping another person do something that they didn't think they were capable of doing. Like that was something that I just gravitated towards since I was in earliest memories with early friends, moving around a lot growing up, and in all sports and athletics forums. And so that is why I got into it. And that's what I still enjoyed about it on a day-to-day basis. But that was no longer, you know, once I got into that world, in corporate world especially, I started losing sight of that as far as that's the juice that I got, but that wasn't how I was measuring. And that is how you should measure, because it is the impact on other people. It is the contributions. It is the relationships that you have with other human beings. That's truly what makes leadership so special. And there's just a disconnect there. There's a well-intended thing to try and give the right people the right nods and bigger spans of control and all of that. But yeah, the intrinsic game is the game that I made sure that's what I started to channel into much more, and really made, honestly, at this point in my game, could give I'm CEO right now, right? Because I've given myself that title in a startup, but I could give a shit about titles.
Yeah.
Right. And I've felt that way for quite a long time.
Yeah. Yeah. Throughout your leadership, when you've had employees, we're kind of rabbit trailing here a bit, but I'm curious because I experienced a lot of people really needing titles to feel like they had the worth and value that they were looking for. at my last company. And I feel like the pendulum swung too far, and I made mistakes by just handing out titles like they were cookies. And I felt like that was a really big mistake. I'm curious what you've seen, experienced, and how you've navigated that.
I really think it's a leadership responsibility. Like, I think the best leaders are great at helping people recognize that they need to define success for themselves through an inside game, right? They need to define success for themselves based on things that they're going to care about and give a shit about when they're 80 and 90 years old. And if you can be inspiring enough about that type of a process, it's literally life-changing for people if they do it. And it is, because if I no longer am at the mercy of subjective opinion and political bureaucracy and all of these things that are really a part of the award process and the title process and the bonus process and all of that, then I learn how to live a much more happy, fulfilled, balanced career in life. And quite frankly, that means I'm going to operate more consistently at my highest level, because it's when we're not happy, it's when we're frustrated, it's when we're impatient, it's when we're angry, when we feel like whatever it is, negativity, that we're not going to perform at our highest level, right? All forms of science shows that. So you get this thing where if you deliver that message and you say, that's my expectation as the leader, is that we don't hang ourselves so high on that, and you operate that way because you can't say it if you're not believing in it and living it yourself, then you give people this freedom to realize I can chase, I can be aspirational, I can still want to go for big things, but I'm not dependent on them. My soul, my significance, right? All my self-esteem is not dependent on that perfect path in whatever direction I thought success was,
Yeah. Do you, with your clients, with Crew, are you doing a lot of that purpose, principle type work, core values and all that? Like, is that part of what you're working with in your network?
Yeah, I mean, it's a group collective effort with that, but a core part of our ethos that we talk about in Crew, because there's a lot of places you can go and network, and we are trying to be the anti-network network, right? Where you can actually be like the most real human being that you're capable of being, which, by the way, for leaders, there ain't a lot of places for that, because it's like, once you get in this leadership thing, you think you have to just keep being more and more perfect. Like that's the way at least it was. It's starting to shift in certain circles, but there are not a lot of places where you can be around a lot of people that are of a certain leadership caliber and experience and background, and you can still be a completely normal human being, right? And so we really try and cultivate that atmosphere. And so, in our core ethos, diversity of perspectives is one of our pillars, which is why we welcome people from all role types, all industries. We don't go narrow and niche. That's where normal networking community always goes. It's narrow and niche. And we are not. We're broad and we're diverse. And it will continue to get more as we get the word out. We focus on personal and professional. We want to support each other and be focused in our own careers and with each other and with our teams on the personal side as much as the professional side, because that's the only way you can be an effective leader, right? You have to blend the two. And people that aren't good at that really, in my opinion, aren't really that great of leaders. And then number three is, the biggest piece to your question here is, I hope that what we do with being a peer support ecosystem and all of that helps people hit big jobs and keep making money and knock down operational challenges. But what I'm most interested in is that I want people to be in tune with, every time they're associating with us and Crew, how am I getting as much meaning and fulfillment out of my life and career as possible? That's the game. That is the game that a lot of us need. There are in a lot of places in life that check you in on that. You may have spiritual things that you do, right? There are certain things that you do and certain people you are around in certain forums, but most of them probably aren't around a lot of other people in the similar shoes and boat. True. And that's what's unique about Crew, is we're keeping you in tune with that thing that we all know we're going to care the most about, right? Every time somebody loses a loved one, what do we think about? We think about all the stuff that means the most, but then you go back down to your heads down day job and get sucked into the normal stuff. And you're defining success under a certain way until another major life change happens. And then you reflect on what's most important. And so our job is to help you be more proactive and not wait for the reactive oh shit moments of life. To remember day to day, this is what matters most. And when I operate with that, I'm probably a pretty compelling leader, because a lot of human beings want to be around people that keep them in tune to that as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's just a powerful contagion that you spread,
Yeah. It sounds amazing. You know, I try to have people around me that I call my challenge network.
Yeah.
I had a podcast guest talk about his personal board of directors. And I just love that concept. We need those folks around us. And it sounds like what you're creating is, I mean, you're creating the big, wider network forum so that everyone can find those people for themselves in a judge-free zone with similar mindsets, similar pursuits. And that sounds really refreshing. Like we'll definitely have to sidebar after the interview.
Yeah. Yeah, we all kind of want it. It's like a lot of us just don't realize how much we could use it. And it's no knock on our companies. Even if you're in a great company culture, there's politics, man, right? There's things that
Sure.
you just cannot avoid because you all are under certain microscopes that when you're outside of that sphere, you can break free of that handcuff. You know, that's the beauty of being in a, like you said, a judge-free zone and letting people, board of advisors, great analogy, except that we also want to be, you know, we want to not just be a board and a resource. We're actually cultivating the whole friend and personal side as well.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And depending on where you are in your company, right? I was the president of a company. It's lonely there because it's not even about being judged a lot of times. It's like, I literally can't talk about this. Yeah. You know, like would you be breaking some sort of privacy or non-disclosure, whatever it might be. And so, yeah, you're just kind of left, well, I guess I'm going to deal with this really big, heavy stuff and not have anyone to talk to about it or process through it with. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which includes personal stuff, right? That you're navigating. And so I think, you know, we've spent all these hours working, right? There's this massive crossover with work and life because of technology following us around 24/7. And you hit your weekends and they blow by because it's about having fun and recharging. So this was a little bit of a selfish need. I was like, there is nowhere in my life when I was turning 40 and the idea of crew was emerging, right? There was nowhere in my life where I had the time, the place, and the group of relatable people on a regular recurring basis where I felt like I could talk about the things that I'm struggling with. And it's not really a counselor's job, half these things. Some things are, but it's like, this is not counselor stuff. It's really not spouse stuff, right? And it's really not even like your average acquaintance friend stuff. This is a very specific thing that we're trying to create a support system around that people need and normally do not have, you know?
That really is incredible. I love hearing about this. And, you know, I'll give you a chance to shamelessly plug it even more at the end here, but let's dive into the rough patches that we all have on our journey. What's one of the biggest hurdles or adversities you've had to overcome?
Oh man, I mean this you know, entrepreneurially, you mean mainly with the stuff I'm doing now,
or life, right? I mean, to me, it sounds like work is work and life is life, but you understand that those things are intermeshed, right? And you're surrounding yourself with these quote unquote work people, but they're part of the life aspect. And so, you know, when I talk about adversity or hurdle, I mean, it could be however you want to interpret that.
Yeah. Honestly, Jason, I think the hardest thing to do in this life is to figure out and find things that you are passionate about and that you really enjoy doing and figure out how to monetize that and how to make it a part of a lifestyle and a living and a career. And then at the same time, not overdo it. Like it's a 3-way challenge to me that quite frankly, it's still a work in progress for me. I'm getting better with some things are improving, but you know, like how do I figure out what I really want to do and why? Some people never figure that out. They just go down lanes and like I said, decades roll by and it's all, you just got into that lane, man. And it's just about climbing those mountains in the horizon.
Going through the motions.
Going through the motions but when you do find that out, you know, okay, now I found it out. Here's what I really would like to do. Here's what people have told me my whole life I'm good at, or I should do or whatever. But then how do I monetize it? Or if I've been down one lane, I'm used to making X amount of money. How do I actually pivot and break away from that? That was the challenge I had to face. How do I leave executive level, right? Stable, secure equity and money that I'm so damn used to for 12 years and a lifestyle that I've gotten used to and go down to this path of the unknown and go to zero income twice in the last 5 years. that when you have a family and you're not 25 anymore, right? Living under a
Right.
parent's house or something. I mean, that's a hard dichotomy. And then even if you figure that out, then the third challenge is, okay, now you've probably figured it out. Now you've gone head speed, full speed into it. You cut the boats, you give it everything you've got. Now, how do you not burn yourself out or overdo it to the point where you're creating collateral damage for life, right? For relationships and all of that. That's a hard thing to nail, right? I mean, most of us get stuck on one of those. So it's like, it's hard to kind of go through that whole process. And even if you're fortunate in one or two of the buckets, not feel like another one starts to struggle.
Yeah. I mean, you're the way you're talking, I think a lot of us entrepreneurs feel that mindset. And I think at the same time as understanding it and living it as a reality, as I hear you put it all like that succinctly, this question, it's like, I think I understand why some people they work a job and they pay the bills. So I'm just going to do that.
Oh, totally. Jason,
this is not easy work.
I joke all the time with people. I am 100% certain of why most people don't stay in entrepreneurial lanes, why most startups have such a high failure rate. Like, it is literally the hardest shit I could have ever possibly imagined. And I'm a challenge junkie that thinks it's been waking up at 6 a.m. since I was 7 years old, right? With like crazy drive and ambition. And there is nothing like, I always tell someone, if you've gone off on your own, I don't give a shit if it was 1 year, 2 years, whatever it was. I don't care how much you made. If you learn how to survive at all and support a family or anything at all on your own, you have done one of the hardest things in life. Totally. And you should be forever proud of yourself. Right? And it's okay, by the way, that you may decide that that the thing you tried or that you picked maybe wasn't sustainable or maybe did create, tipping point issues that weren't healthy for you long-term in the relationship and the wellness category for yourself. And then you pivot back to a little bit more safety and stability. That's okay too, right? Like, people shouldn't feel like a failure, because I'm telling you, in my opinion, just trying it and just making it work for even a short amount of time is just one of the most underrated things that a human being can do.
Yeah, I just started reading Hidden Potential by Adam Grant. I think it's his most recent book. Just a few days ago I started it. And he's talking about, we have to make ourselves uncomfortable. And when that's the aim, you actually learn so much faster. You achieve so much greater by intentionally putting yourself in those uncomfortable situations and making mistakes on purpose. And, it's like, as hard as these things are, right? You're talking about really weighty questions, life-altering questions. The exciting and kind of scary, sad part about it is, you and I and a lot of the folks that are listening to this, we don't have a choice, because we're virtually unemployable anyways. So like, we have to go ahead and make our own path, because nobody's going to hire us and keep us for very long. Unless you go to Amex, I guess. So, see if they're hiring, but we're in trouble.
Yeah. At this point, there's no going back, right? I mean, it's like, sometimes it can be, but if you've really cut the boats and if you've really decided you're going to do the entrepreneurial thing, and that's what you are really most inspired by, where most growth happens for you, I think it's really hard to go back. But look, for some people, I do think a 360 or what, boomerang thing or whatever it is, they shouldn't feel ashamed about it, because I truly just have so much respect for anyone that tries doing anything on their own. And I also have respect for people that are able to find happiness and meaning and fulfillment. Again, to me, that's the marker. And if they're doing that in a corporate job for 30 years, they're winning. And I'm trying to be like them, right? In my own way. So I think it can happen either way, for anybody, depending on,
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, people that are more inclined to find contentment, I envy, they're, and I respect just as much as somebody who's trying to make $1 billion or whatever, there is no measurement. There is no good or bad in terms of how we pursue our life. If we're finding fulfillment, then that's what's going to be personally rewarding. And as long as we're not hurting people in the process, nothing wrong with any of those paths.
That's right. Yeah. And especially if you find one that seems to be helping people, right? Then I think, man, you should just feel so good about that. And I think that's what most human beings deep down crave. Like, I do. I just, in all the deep work I've decided to do and stuff, I feel like what we contribute and what type of human beings we ultimately evolve into becoming as we get smarter and learn and all that hard knocks stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what are our relationships? Those are the things. Contributions, how good of people we become, and then ultimately how we can then give that back to others and have strong relationships. Everything else is kind of like, sometimes you make $1 billion, sometimes it's 100,000. You know, it's a little bit all relative, you know, because if you do those three things, you're probably going to be a pretty happy person in this short life.
Absolutely. Yeah. So let's get a little more even the nitty gritty, the interesting, spicy stuff that, you know, all of our listeners can relate to. What is it that's keeping you up at night right now?
You know, once you start getting something going and maybe get some momentum, the hardest thing I think is just, there's just so much shit to think about all the time. Like, you know, I mean, there's just so much stuff. And that means something's, you know, even if it's going well, I mean, and it's working, you know, and then a lot of people start bringing you all kinds of ideas and there's all kinds of opinions, and there's just so many different things that you can do to spend your time. And I think the ability to know how to maximize your time without draining yourself to a depleted, burnt out state, and to be focused on the things that have the most significant impact, that's the hardest thing to do. And it's the thing that I try and stay most diligently in tune with and try and recover from the quickest, because I ain't perfect at it, but I'm trying to just be faster at recovering from those moments when I fall off the horse, I get hijacked, right? But that's the hard part, man. There's just, you know, there's no checking out. You know, I always joke, like, I work for myself and I have this ultimate level of flexibility, supposedly. But the last time I was on a vacation is when I worked for Amex, right? Yeah. Like the last time I was on like a full vacation in my mind was when I was working for somebody else. So you got to know what you're signing up for, right? I mean, and it's not that you don't block it out and delegate and take your time, and I do, but it's always there. And you know it's always there, and you know it's always a little bit on you, you know?
Yeah. Speaking of being on you, right? Like you're about 2 years in, right, crew?
Yeah, I mean, like, it depends on when you kind of consider the origination of the idea. But yeah, it's like 2 years-ish. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's still startup land, right? As far as I'm concerned, I'm sure. Which means you're probably wearing a lot of hats, if not all of them. What is that experience like right now for you?
Exhilarating and exhausting, man. Exhilarating and exhausting, both simultaneously. Some days it's more on the one end of the spectrum than the other. But I grew up in sales. So, you know, I'm leveraging every ounce of that 15 years of experience, and I'm doing as much of the selling and marketing and positioning that I possibly can. Why? Because honestly, it's not totally figured out yet. And you and I were chatting about this earlier. I honestly wouldn't be able to delegate it. And the kind of person I need is too expensive still. Right. So that's on me. I'm trying to be a great operator. I want to set from the beginning a company culture that's unlike anyone. I want people to want to leave really expensive jobs to want to work here at Crew. And I think we will succeed at that. That's how you know you got a great company. Will people leave a lot of great money and stability to come work with you? And I think we are creating something that in time, as we become a bigger company, people will do that. And I have to set that tone, and I have to model that and not get sucked into the stress of the execution phase that we're in. And then the third piece of wearing the hat is, you know, being a facing figure and deliverer of stuff within the community. I bring all the coaching that I've ever done into the community. I want to be a resource. I want to be there for every single member, especially these people that came into this community at such early phases, which was, you know, something I'm very grateful for. You know, the hardest pitch I ever made was to people to join a community that had no members. You know, it's like, you know, there's no harder sales pitch in the world, trust me. But some people dove in, and they dove in because of why you're doing it. They dove in because of the vision. It wasn't fully baked. You know, they weren't sorting through features and benefits. You know, those people self-select out of coming into Crew in these early days. Totally. And I want to deliver back for them. I want to help every person in transition. I want to help every person that has an operational problem. I want to help every person dealing with a personal problem. So obviously you can't do all of it at all times, and that's hard.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely. So before we kind of move through to the end, what have I not asked you that I should?
Man, I don't know. We're talking about a lot of the stuff that feels like my passion points at this point. I don't know. Maybe it's just what if I were to ask myself a question that you haven't asked me, maybe it would be something along the lines of, what do you think is one of the most misunderstood ingredients for success, right? Because there's one piece for me that's clearly emerged in these years of my life, my 40s, that wasn't around in the beginning. Most of my DNA is still my DNA, right? Like I mentioned, most people are driven. If they're driven, they're driven. They've been driven for a long time. If they have a lot of perseverance and persistence, they've been that way for a long time. If they're very coachable and they're very intellectually curious, they're going to always have a voracious appetite for getting better and learning and growing. But to me, the secret sauce, and you hear some gurus out there talk about it these days, that I didn't have, that I'm actually much better suited for now, is patience. That's it.
What is that?
Because that's exactly right. In today's day, we have no idea.
Yeah.
It's almost becoming extinct. And that's a sad thing in the food-sped world that we operate in. Now, next thing, right? Which is the way we are now trained to operate based on technology and everything. And patience is that wise old, right? Thousands of years old X factor that it's really hard when it's fun. In fact, I think it's hardest for all those other things that I told you that most people think about success traits, drive, ambition, determination, all of discipline, all that. Well, guess what's the hardest thing for those type of people to have is patience. Mm-hmm. Right? They're mostly very impatient people. And I think that's one of the biggest missing links for most people in their pursuits, whether it's working in regular jobs or doing entrepreneurial things. The amount of patience, the amount of time, the amount of consistency, the amount of years that it takes to normally accomplish anything. And I think if you have patience, it actually can overrule a lot of the other stuff that gets on all the feeds and documentaries.
I agree. It's also being in startup mode myself, having that patience and realizing, okay, one foot in front of the other. It's just, the next step in front of me is the one I have my horizon. My horizon's 5 years, 10 years down the road where I know I want to be, need to be. But when I start thinking about 5 years from now, and that's all my thought, and I want to just go a million miles an hour, it's crippling. That's right. And so I haven't really thought about it as patience, but it is. It's like, let me just kind of back up a bit, take it one breath, one step at a time. Is that kind of what you mean? Or would you expand on it and go even further?
No, I think whatever it is that helps keep you in perspective, gives you perspective when you need it, gives you, having grace on yourself when you need it, whatever the thing is that you need, patience is normally the panacea, And so I think for different people, it's going to be different things. And at different times, it's going to mean different things. But the reality is patience is the thing that helps you play the long game. A lot of talk these days about delayed gratification, It's, what am I willing to sacrifice now so that I can have all these things I kind of hope for, would love to have down the road? Guess what you need for that? You need patience. Yeah, you need drive and ambition and determination and talent, but you also need a unbelievable amount of patience. And it's just not glorified enough that people haven't grown up thinking I need patience. And in fact, in today's generations, nobody, like we were joking, nobody even talks about patience that much. So I think it's probably going to be the thing, right? I think it's going to be the thing for the next, as long as I'm alive. People that recognize that's a part of the secret sauce, they're going to do well, and they're going to maximize their potential, and whatever time that takes. And it's different for everybody.
I don't envy our children. A generation of people that won't even understand what patience is. Like everything's immediate gratification, instant dopamine hits, micro dopamine hits, and all that. It's going to be hard for them to slow it down a bit.
Super hard, man. I mean, I am very concerned about, my son's sane and, rational and in perspective upbringing because of all the things, to your point, that are coming at him and us as parents trying to raise. And by the way, we're sucked into it now too. So I don't know that we're great role models on it most of the time.
Right.
It's a tough game, man. But I do think it seems like this really passive thing. And I think that the strongest people you will ever see, the people you're most admiring, when you keep peeling the onion back past all that sexy stuff that sits at the face value, you recognize that's one patient SOB, right? They were going to, if it took 50 years, they were going to get there.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of the mentality, right? I'm doing something that if no matter how long it takes, I'm going. And if someone has that mentality, they're virtually unstoppable.
And the overnight success stories had something to do with right place, right time. It's almost never about the person, self-made man that doesn't actually exist, right? There was always something else going on.
Yeah, I mean, again, because of social media, there's a pop, right? And the 15-year-old gets, all these millions of views and gets sponsors. And so I guess those stories are just flooding people's brains these days. But other than those, you may as well add on 5, 10, 15 years onto every single, overnight success story, because that's really what it took.
Yeah. And even those, in some instances, like the real viral stories that we see. I forget his name. There was a musician that was talking about his story. He went from nothing to everything, just all of a sudden millions and millions and millions, right? But he kind of reflected. He's like, I've been grinding with no viewership, no fans for 10 years.
Yeah.
And then it popped and it all exploded. And so, I mean, even those overnight successes, a lot of times had the hustle, the grind, and they needed the patience.
I agree, Jason. I think most of the ones I've actually heard about or like dug a little deeper on, 10 years is probably the right average, right? Yeah. It's been a 10-year journey to every big change that we see with somebody. You can almost always go back 5, 7, 10, maybe even more. And that takes a lot of patience, Yeah. So,
well, folks, y'all heard it here. Work on your patience. That's everyone listening right now is like, damn it, that's not what I want to do.
Yeah, get this guy off and get the next.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Adam. Jeez, all right. Now this has been a great guy. Yeah, exactly. Fast forward. No, Adam, this has been really, really wonderful hearing your insights and your journey up to this point. Thank you so much for sharing everything. I do want to give you another opportunity to just kind of do a shameless plug, right? What do you want to tell us about Crew or something else that is on your mind?
Yeah, look, I would love to, because look, this is the easiest thing. It was the hardest thing to sell in the very earliest days. Now it's one of the easiest things I've ever sold, because I've never believed in something I'm doing so much, which is there's no better place to be when you're talking about something. But yeah, if someone out there that's listening is a VP and above, leader, 15 or more years into career, we're trying to curate a community of folks that it's not an elitist kind of thing model, right? But it's truly just bringing in the people with the most similar types of, backgrounds and experiences, but yet also with this blend of complete diverse backgrounds, because we've got enterprise, we've got startup, we've got marketing, HR, product, sales, all of that blended together. So it's this holistic leadership support ecosystem. I always joke, Jason, I was 15 years into revenue leadership, and I actually literally started to get I almost dropped an F-bomb here, but I almost started to get literally nauseous about talking only to revenue leaders 15 or 20 years in, and like the best practice slinging that happens. Cause I was just like, and then maybe it's me, right? But I just got bored of it. And at 15 years into my career, the thing I wanted and craved, and I know probably needed the most, was people outside my bubble, outside the silos that I've already had overabundance of access to. That's the kind of perspective, viewpoints, access, connections that are invaluable, that are also quite hard to get. You'd have to do a hell of a lot of work, trust me, on LinkedIn and stuff to curate and get those types of different connection points, because you normally only have the most access in the similar lanes, your industry, your role charter, your city, whatever it may be. So if you want to be a part of a very diverse and growing ecosystem that, like I said, has an ethos of diversity of perspectives, personal and professional blend, and living a life and leaving a leadership legacy around more meaning and fulfillment, not just chasing titles and money, then you're going to think Crew's a pretty damn cool place. And
Wow.
we'd love
and
to
where do
have
we go? Is there a
exploratory calls.
website? What's the best way to find out the info?
Yeah, look, I mean, I'm on LinkedIn more than I would like to be as an introvert. So you can you can ping me directly if you'd like, or anybody that you see, tagging themselves as a member, an advisor at Crew, crewexec.com. So crewexec.com is the website. We give a little bit of a flair and a vibe, but again, it's invitation only, because again, we want to make sure people coming in are really kind of go-givers. And they're not just looking for something where they're going to come in and consume and transact. We're going to leave that for the trade shows, right? It's an entirely different form of a networking experience.
Wow. That's so cool. All right. Well, let's just end things off with our quick fire. So I'll say two things and you choose one. All right. First one, car or truck, country or city?
Ooh.
Out there in Dripping Springs.
Country.
Okay. Let's see, what was it? Oh, soda or alcohol?
I'm curtailing this now. Alcohol, though. I never touch soda.
Nice. Fast food or sit down restaurant?
Oh, man. I'm a foodie. Sit down all the way.
Nice. And then last silly one, the toilet paper. It goes over or under?
Over or under? You mean the way it rolls off?
Yeah.
Definitely over.
Of course.
Under always hangs on the floor. I don't understand that. So.
Yeah. Just making sure I didn't have to delete this whole recording.
Yeah.
Adam, so good to having you. Big thanks for joining the show today. It's been a great conversation. Thanks so much.
Yeah, Jason, loved it, man. Great to connect, and obviously we'll be in touch.
Yeah. All right. This is Work Cultured, and we are signing off.